Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Katie, and I am the Director of Community here at Rock Paper Coin. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started as everyone starts to come in. Please head to the chat and do not forget to change your settings to everyone so we can all see your comments. In just a second, you'll see the lovely Sari pop into the chat. So definitely say hello to her there. Another thing we like to remind is that community is big to us. So please say hello in the chat. Let everyone know who you are, where you are, and what you do. Don't forget to drop your Instagram handle so that everyone can follow each other and make new connections. And speaking of getting to know you, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Rock Paper Coin. And then please also follow Katie, who is such a fantastic resource to follow at KT Mary, which Sari will also add to the comments here. And lastly, for those new to Rock Paper Coin, we are a female-founded and owned tech startup. Our platform serves small business owners just like you by providing invoices, proposals, contracts, and so much more on a modern platform that your clients love using, all at an affordable price. And with that, I want to go ahead and get us started today. So, our guest, I really feel like she needs no real introduction, but based in Miami, Florida, but travels worldwide, Katie is known for her elegant and timeless style and her ability to capture natural, authentic moments. She has been featured in numerous publications and has worked with many high-profile clients, as well as offering photography workshops and mentoring other photographers who want to learn from her experience. She is a passionate adventurer, entrepreneur, public speaker, and business coach to other photographers. She's an avid reader, dog lover, martini drinker, and runner. Katie is a two-part realist and a one-part incurable dreamer, and that is honestly just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, look, if you were looking for a sign to kick off this year by stepping into a learning session with a true powerhouse who is also incredibly relatable, this is it, my friends. Katie, my friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I know our audience is eager to hear your insights and all the wonderful things.
Oh, well, thank you so much to you and the whole Rock, Paper, Coin team and to everybody that's showing up in the chat. So good to see you all. I see some friends in there already. I'm just excited to be here, and I couldn't agree more. What a great way to kick off the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we got started, actually, you and I were chatting a little bit, and we wanted to take a little moment of silence for everything that is happening right now in the California area with the fires. I know you work there, it's near and dear to your heart, and you have friends out there. I have family. We were just there, just got back, a mere hours ago. So it's all very, very surreal. So thank you for wanting to do that. And please, like, let's take a little moment here. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay. To segue now into this, it's like take a hot second. That really just helps you put into perspective so many things that are going on. But this morning, I would love for you to dive in just a little bit. Start us off with how you built your brand into what it is today, and what also has sparked this desire for helping other creatives.
Well, I think those are two parts of the same conversation in the sense that as I was building my brand, I was very much shooting in the dark. A lot of that was before a lot of the beautiful education like this were out there. I was really just looking at what I thought. I mean, at the time, we weren't even talking about what a brand is. We were just like, let's build a business. I guess I should need better business cards. And, that was kind of the direction we were heading. And the industry was really just starting to evolve. And I think I recognized intuitively that consistency was part of that. And for me, the beauty and the aesthetics were always just first and foremost. And sometimes to my detriment, I care about those things so much that that was just kind of where my passion and focus always went. And it obviously helped shape the brand. And so we were just inside of our community talking about yesterday, those original ethos or passions that you have when you start a business, often those become the backbone, the pillars in which the business should expand and grow upon. And I still feel that today. So to me, always kind of having that air of luxury, believing that the details are just as important as the big things. Really, the beauty and the aesthetics are things that are so important. And all of that came really natural to me, but a lot of the unknowns when it came to what we're going to be talking about today, profitability, business, how do you scale? How do you grow? What does that all look like? That was really foreign to me. And I spent a lot of years struggling and finding out by trial and error. And that was something that I definitely knew I didn't want other people to have to experience if they didn't need to. And so it's been a passion of mine to be able to share my mistakes and learnings throughout the years with others so that they might be able to have a leg up and have a little bit more ease and grace on their way through the journey.
Oh, I love that. See, there are many reasons why I love my job, but one of them is getting to hang out and chat with incredible artists like yourself, because you're so right. There's so many different things that all set us apart on all of our journey. And it's incredible that throughout the journey, you really do and are able to find the things that kind of like pull at your heartstrings. It's so different for all of us. And I think that that's the one thing that people always asks our guests is what sets you apart from other
Mm.
creatives, right? And as everyone's trying to find like what their secret sauce is, I think it's really easy for people to find pros that they relate to or that they find as a mentor. But one thing I can tell you that definitely sets others apart is passion.
Hmm.
Right? And there's a certain fire that is lit in some pros that truly just seems to accelerate them into a different level. Looking back, I can't imagine you ever imagined that your journey was going to lead you to where you are now. Do you agree with that? Obviously. But what do you think sets you apart and makes you successful? Do you think it's because you really have been able to kind of find your path in your journey and learn through all of the processes that you just talked about, or is there something else that really kind of lights you up?
Yeah, I'd say both because to your point about the passion, a certain amount of success is just being passionate enough not to quit. And just when you get knocked down, to be able to stand back up and go again and say, okay, I got the message. That wasn't exactly how I should do it. Let me try again. So there is that. And, if you don't have passion, wow, it's going to be really hard, to pull yourself off the floor. Inevitably, that's going to happen. So that's a huge part of it. And then I also think that there is this need and this willingness to look at yourself even 20 years in as a beginner who's learning and looking to improve and grow. And I think that is one thing that I have always felt very much is very comfortable to be a student. And I think over the years I've gotten better and wiser at how I pick my mentors and where I devote my time, energy, and resources like money into. But I think that aspect of it, if you can really recognize that there's a lot of information out there and a lot of people that can really give you a leg up. Well, if you're out there learning and improving, once again, your growth, just like compound interest, is going to accelerate if other people are just going, no, I'm going to, just binge this Netflix series all weekend versus like you're the person that's reading the books or going to this webinar or whatever that may be. It's definitely going to help your growth long term. And that's been the case for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a burning question for you because it's so different for everybody. What does working smarter, not harder mean to you?
Oh, well, first and foremost, this is a category that I can confidently say I have learned this one the hard way and am still a student of. And I think my latest answer, which probably wouldn't have even been the same a year ago, has been to try to find the flow, just the same way that a river is going to naturally divert around rocks or just different things in its path, and that's why they, create their beautiful paths. Like, same thing, where can you find that balance of making your way but also utilizing your strengths, utilizing your natural talents, finding your secret sauce, not trying to, become the thing that you're not, and therefore, swimming uphill, that kind of thing. So I think that those aspects have really been a key component, and something that I try to come back to time and time again.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so true. I mean, I love thinking about businesses as a river, and just you can really visualize yourself of trying to either go upstream or just stop fighting the currents and just float your way down. That's so great. I love that. Okay, I feel like this is a perfect segue into pricing. So let's jump into your friend has field.
Sorry. My
No,
dog Rue is like, now I'm really excited. I'm gonna have a party on the sofa while you guys are doing this.
you know, I had to lock mine away for the exact same reason, but we obviously should have let them have a puppy party before we got
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
Like, note to self for next time. Note to self. Okay, so it seems like year after year, pricing continues to be such a hard piece of the business puzzle for so many pros. I'm proud, earlier what you said, I'm proud of the conversations that I've heard lately about money. And even
Mhm.
today, I'm glad that we're speaking so candidly and giving attention to this topic as it deserves. But tell me, because I have no doubt you have had your own pricing roller coaster journey throughout all the years. How did you learn to price for value and not just time? And in your opinion, what is the difference?
Man, we could just stop right there and let's just do the next hour on this question,
Yeah.
because I think that it's such a slippery thing, right? Like, the minute that you think like, oh, I think I've got it, then you're like, phew, it slips right out of your hands. And what I mean by that is we have to start, of course, with the idea of time, and the idea of okay, where do I fit in the marketplace? Where do I think, am I a Nike sneaker that's $100? Am I a Louboutin that's $400, or something like that? We start to put ourselves in those brackets. But then at some point, as we continue the journey, we have to kind of, once again, let that river kind of like dictate our own path and start to just see, okay, well, am I booking a lot, and am I growing my skills? Are people, am I over delivering? Do I have aspirations to be in a different marketplace? How does that all start to factor in there? And that's when that kind of X factor that you're talking about of, um, I love always that story about Picasso. It's probably not a real story, but of him being at the bar where, somebody asks him to draw something on a cocktail napkin, and he hands it over to them and says that'll be $25,000, and they said that took you, 5 minutes, and he's like, well, not actually, that took me 25 years to be able to do that. And so it's that same idea that really only you can define it. And only in the recent years have I also really begun to understand the full scope. And I think as you climb the ladder in this industry, you start to realize, as an elite planner or photographer or videographer, that you're doing so much more than just planning a wedding or taking pictures of a wedding or filming a wedding. You're, taking a calendar, a date a year from now, and saying, whatever's going on in my life, I will hold space for this event. I will continue to make sure that between now and then, I'm, not going to go bungee jumping, or I'm going to mind my health, and I'm going to grow my skills. I'm going to continue to stay relevant, grow and evolve. I'm going to be able to perform at a high level, whether there's a windstorm, a snowstorm, or a crazy bridesmaid, or, whatever it may be. There's all of that adds up to the reason why we charge what we charge. And that's that level of expectation that you're paying to give your clients a certain, or they're paying to have a certain level of expectation of you, and it being valid. Where, when we're starting out at that lower price bracket, you could just throw up your hands and say, I don't know, there was a thunderstorm, that's why all my pictures look bad.
It's so funny you say that. We just had a wedding in Palm Springs, which spearheaded our trip out to California, in the past couple weeks. And we knew we were going to stop at Disneyland. I have two younger kids, right? So it's like, hey, we're going home, we're going to Disneyland. And they could not wrap their heads around the fact of why we weren't going there first. And we had all these days, extra days before. So like, why can't we just go before? I'm like, because someone is depending on me to not break an ankle at Disney or to like go down and get the flu that some kid left on a handlebar, right? Like there's just an expectation of like, my priority to being here is to the clients who have paid me and who I am serving to
Mhm.
do my absolute best. And it's already risky enough getting on a plane and possibly getting any germs and trying to stay healthy between landing and getting to the venue. But I owe that to them, and to put myself in a situation that could potentially compromise and put that at risk is exactly the mindset that is so incredibly important. And I'm thrilled that you said that, because it's a mindset shift of prioritizing that is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah,
And
and that's where we look at the true pros. I always love to, the now retired Tom Brady is a great example because his process was so documented. But he took his health, his training, his performance to a whole nother level year round, regardless of whether it was practice season, football season, you name it. But that became his way of life. And sure, they were paying X amount per game or per season, but he was embodying that all year round. And the same thing goes with us, that we are preparing for that wedding next May right here today so that we can show up and serve them at our best.
yeah, oh, I love that. And another vital piece, I think, to the pricing puzzle is rock solid, unwavering confidence, right? And so I know for a fact clients can tell when you believe in yourself, in your abilities, in your services, and in your offerings and what you bring to the table. Do you agree? And how important do you think that is to any pricing strategy?
I think it's everything. Energy, we all know is real. We're going to see more and more science coming out around quantum physics and what we all know to be true, but it's just going to be more undeniable in years coming out with science. So your energy of what you're putting out is absolutely having a reaction with whomever you are speaking to, and helping to determine the outcome of those events. And so I think when we go in, like timid little fawns going, I don't know about that $10,000, I'm not even sure about it. They're definitely feeling that. And as their guides, as us really trying to instill confidence and that their expectations are valid in them, it's a slippery slope. So I think for me, that's where really understanding my numbers, taking them out of the closet, if you will, and really bringing them into the daylight and starting to really fully understand them, that helped me to develop my confidence over time, because it wasn't this esoteric, just made up thing that I was throwing out into the world. It was something that I knew, I had calculated, I understood, and all of a sudden that helped me to feel more confident when I was relaying that to the client.
Absolutely. So walk us through your go-to booking and pricing strategy. Do you already have it mapped out? Is it a little bit of both? You wing it, or is it customized per project, per client? Like walk us through what that looks like.
Yeah, and this is where the winging it was my kind of original plan back in the day, because I think we were just figuring this all out together as an industry. Like, what should photographers charge? We don't know. We were all trying to figure it out. And that's where it really came to bite me in the butt, because then a planner would inevitably come well, starting out, first I had the cookie cutter price sheet, like, here you go, pick A, B, or C, order off my fast food menu, please. But then they started saying, yeah, but I need B, but with a bit of C, so can you give me the custom? And I'd be like, great, sure, here's that price. Then a month later, they'd be like, oh, actually, we actually want a bit of A, and we want to change this little thing here. And I'd be like, for the life of me, I can't figure out how I calculated this. And now I'm once again just like making stuff up. And it did not instill confidence. Like you said, that rock solid confidence that we were going for, that was not it. So I understood that I really needed a different strategy, and that's where really kind of my philosophy around pricing with proposals, which is something I now teach around because it really made it more. I needed regimen, I needed structure, I needed things that I couldn't debate. 10 hours equals X. Okay, fine. I'm just following what it says. And those were all calculated on real numbers, so it ensured profitability rather than hoping for it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny because I find that the more you grow your business, obviously you depend so much on referrals, on working consistently with the same kind of vendors over and over again. And the faster you can find that process and the faster you can find that consistency, the easier that it is. Because those conversations are so hard to have when your pricing is all over the place and different for every single client and every different location. And of course, there are things that get added, and there might be something that you charge different for because that event ended up being over the course of 3 days instead of just a typical one day. Of course, always variables. But the conversation gets so much easier to have, and that confidence gets built in when things just become consistent over the course of your bookings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So another thing I think that you have just absolutely nailed down is, and I'm sure you teach in your education in this, but is the art of attracting the right clients. So we all know that not all clients are created equal, and so much plays into attracting our dream clients. And I think that perhaps one of the most overlooked strategies is that pricing can act as a filter when booking clients, right? And I know people have heard this so much, but I don't know if they're actually really understanding what that means because pros are still so afraid of losing a sale or overpricing themselves or being ghosted or losing to a competitor. And I know you see this too as an educator. So, did this ever happen to you? And what is your go to strategy for attracting your dream clients without allowing paranoia or fear to creep in?
Yeah, and I mean, I think of all the things that we're talking about, this is probably one of the most paramount, and it requires a lot of courage actually to step into this one fully because, like you said, at the end of the day, we all have bills that need to be paid. We want there to be food on the plates that we put on the table, all of those things. And so at some point, you're like, hey, I just need to work. But also, if we start to think about our business in a bigger picture, in long term, if we're in this for the long haul, if we want to build not just a job, but careers and brands, well, then we have to take that leap and have the courage to think and dream bigger. And by really figuring out exactly who we are, what we offer, and then who it is for, and really focusing on that, that is one of the biggest steps that we can make. And I think a lot of people that are out there struggling, it is because they're trying to refine their approach while continuously serving a hodgepodge of clients. And so there, with that, it's really hard to narrow down and get in your rhythm and perform and do your thing. If every day you show up and it's a whole different kind of person on the other side of the camera that maybe doesn't value what you're doing or isn't listening or doesn't have the same expectations and desires. And so then it's really hard to get into that rhythm and to build that consistency that you see in all the top performers that are out there, whether they're designers, planners, photographers. You'll notice that, wow, it doesn't matter if they were in St. Bart's or Montana, there's like this through line of excellence. And that's because, once again, they're narrowing it down to make sure that this person will allow them to do what they do best. And that's such an important aspect of it. And so I think number one is you've got to know that for yourself first and foremost, because if you're looking for your clients to tell that to you, that's going to be difficult. But then really having those conversations, and this is why I love proposals over the cookie cutter packages, because it gets you engaging with people. You and I, could sit down and go, so tell me about your wedding. And you're like, well, it's going to be in my mom's backyard, and I don't like taking pictures, so I just want it to be, you to get in and out really quick, and but whatever it may be, and I'd be like, yeah, there's like 24 red flags that I go, we're probably not in alignment, and that's an important thing for us to get to for both of our sakes.
Yeah. Well, and I also know because way back in the day I've been there and learned my lessons, but to piggyback off of that, this industry is notorious for working to just get paid and
Yes,
then burning out, right? And I
totally.
mean, on a booking platform, we see every day that pros would rather sell themselves short and agree to work with clients who are going to take advantage of them and run themselves into the rut than even have the idea of losing a sale, right?
Yeah.
And what's important to remember is this: when you panic and don't have any bookings coming in, and then you end up accepting that inquiry with a budget of $500 instead of getting the $3,500, right? That you would have otherwise charged for the same service. Or you book 50 clients instead of 15 to make the same amount of money, right? This is dangerous. It's dangerous not only for you, but it's dangerous for the industry and for your value with current and future clients. And I like to think about it this way: you get what you pay for, but you also get what you're paid for. And
Beautiful.
chances are these are not going to be amazing clients who adore you and see your worth or your value, right? So I think, I mean, that just aligns perfectly with what you're saying of just like, you've got to show up, but you got to show up for yourself and you have to do it in a way that makes sense for your business. But you can't just be out there accepting anything that comes in because you're panic booking.
Yeah, and there's like so many different facets to what you just mentioned, and one I think important thing to realize is we're doing a dance. We're collaborating with a partner. So meaning that if the client's on the other side of it, we can only meet them halfway down the field. They have to meet us halfway down the field, because if they don't want to relax in front of the camera and fully trust you, or go on that walk on the beach at sunset, or whatever that may be, that is the thing that's going to be the portfolio builder, well, you're set up for failure to begin with if they're just not into it. So, and I've done that. It's a fast track to burnout, because you're like, why was I even here? And so secondly, if you are that person that's like, okay, great, but back to the thing of my bills and the food on the table, this is where this might be totally controversial, but I would rather see somebody get creative and go, okay, and this is where knowing your numbers matters. What is the deficit of money that I need to make? What are other ways that I could use my craft in a way that's maybe, not this, or even find other ways to fill that void budgetarily. And especially when we're in a kind of a roller coaster economy, this is where we've got to get scrappy and creative and go like, what other ways can I alleviate that burden so I'm not potentially derailing the direction of my entire business and brand that I'm trying to build just because I need to pay this bill right now. So what other ways can I alleviate that, and I can still have my head in the game and still focus on my ideal clients? And there have been times that I've absolutely done work at a lower rate or even for free, because I realized they are my ideal client. It's a huge marketing and brand building opportunity. It's all of those things. And I did lots of homework, and it was still a stepping stone to my version of success versus like, oh, this is just a band-aid so that I can eat this Friday.
I think it was a choice. There is a
Mm-hmm.
marketing choice and then there's a bad decision, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that
Exactly.
is absolutely, and it's so hard. Our businesses are our babies. It's something that belongs to us. It's different than working for a corporation that belongs to somebody else and you're a number. This is yours and yours alone. And so it is incredibly difficult sometimes to detach ourselves from making emotional decisions or practical, just really good. Hey, I'm going to see the reward for this later on this year when this comes to be. So I could not agree with you more. And I think that, another part of this, it gets a little bit scary, but I think a lot of pros think about pricing strategies from a profit only view. But as you start making more money, and you start working on bigger projects with more notable clients, let's just say, the demands and the stakes start getting higher and riskier. And sometimes things go sideways, right? Not always your fault. I mean, the same could be said for when you start taking on just any kind of client, like things can get dicey, right? So, you know that contracts are our jam here at Rock Paper Coin, but some clients, luxury or not, escalate things to leaving a negative review
Hmm.
or filing a dispute, which we have for sure seen an uptick here at Rock Paper Coin with the current industry and even threatening legal action. So have you had to navigate disputes, bad reviews, upset clients, and what have you learned from that process that you carry into your business now?
Yeah, and it's such a good topic because I think 2020 was that year where everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, let me figure out what my contract actually says." And it was a scary time where I think a lot of people got that wake up call, and it's like, you don't want to be looking to see if you have insurance the day the flood comes. Same idea. Don't wait for the rain for the umbrella. So this is where I just have found the best way, in my personal opinion, is radical responsibility. That anytime something goes sideways, looking at it through the lens of where could I have set a better expectation? Where did I ignore red flags? Where did I push through a contract that I knew was not in alignment with my ideal client and the vision of my business? Where did I maybe drop the ball? And then instead of just being a victim of a bad circumstance, because at the end of the day, nobody wants that, even that bad client, and I'm saying bad, loosely, they don't want have to leave a bad review or have a bad experience. Like nobody wants to be in these situations. But by taking that radical responsibility and going, I can see where I wasn't clear about the expectation here, or I kind of danced around it, or I've seen a lot of clients, a lot of our photographers over the years kind of try to do this too, where they're so eager for the job that they go, oh yeah, I can shoot film too, and I can, use this kind of lighting or do this, and they kind of sell themselves of they'll figure it out all the way, and that eagerness can sometimes be transmuted into um, you're selling something that you're not necessarily. And so I think that that's where if we can take radical responsibility, we can use that lesson and infuse it in our business. Well, the next time you see a red flag, you might pause and go, okay, I'm going to take an emotional break. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to talk to somebody that is maybe a unbiased third party. And I'm going to explain to them my concerns, exactly, get some trusted opinions, and then I'm going to make a decision. Same thing with the different steps along the way, knowing your numbers, knowing your contracts, knowing what you're capable of, and then being honest. That's a lot of the best people that we work with, whether they're stylists or planners, what people are really paying them for is to say, hey, Sally, I know you really want, the chandeliers to hang from all the trees and whatever, but like, here's why we think that's a bad idea, because it's going to crash on somebody's head or whatever it may be. So I think that's what people are paying for.
Yeah, yeah. And no matter what we want people to know is that mistakes are part of the journey,
They are.
right? The important part is learning from them so that they don't
Hmm.
get hurt. And you get to work with so many different kinds of pros and dynamics all over the world, and which is so great and so important. So, in your opinion, what are the most common mistakes that you see all kinds of pros and vendors making?
Well, I think still to this day, we're here to talk about money and pricing. I do think that there's even some of the best out there are still once in a while just going, I want the job, so I'll just kind of swoop in and match a rate. And to your point, it does kind of negatively trickle down throughout the entire industry that if we can all calculate our numbers, really determine what we're worth individually and hold true to that. And then if there is some big extraneous reason where you go, hey, this is a huge marketing opportunity or something, then evaluate that aside, but not just arbitrarily price matching or discounting, I think is part of that. And then I do think seeing the bigger picture. So one thing I learned during COVID, and it was just such talk about a great learning time for us all, I think we all came out of that period with a lot of lessons. And one of them for me was that this is a team sport and that we're in this together. And so it does not behoove any of us to throw another team member under the bus for a perceived gain on our part. And so where, the planners that I love working for are the ones that will routinely, even if it causes a slight inconvenience for them, will go, you know, you really should hear the photographer out on X, Y, and Z because this we've seen that, if you don't do that first look or whatever it may be, it's really going to leave you crunched later on or whatever the thing may be. And us really looking at it like a team sport. And when you win, I win, and vice versa. If we can all make each other look really good, it just makes the journey a lot more fun. But it really benefits us all the time.
Yeah, putting that on a bumper sticker, putting that everywhere. That is the lesson of 2025. Like,
Yeah,
yes, like that's just it, right? We are all coming together that day and we all have
yes,
levels of expertise that we're bringing. At no point in time is anyone trying to take that away from you, but
totally.
together, so much better together than you are apart. And so yes, yes, yes.
And I
Um,
think
good.
to circle back real quick on the times where you feel like you're not on a team and you're like, hey, I don't know what today is, but it's not a team sport. Once again, go back to that radical responsibility. Where could I have maybe set expectations with a vendor earlier, connected earlier, or just said, hey, Katie, we really could use a parking spot or whatever it may be, and not, waiting till the bride's walking down the aisle to ask for that or whatever that may be.
Yeah, I always say, our contract ends up getting just a little bit longer after each event because there's
Yeah.
always something that happens that teaches you a lesson or something, whether
Yeah.
it's with clients or whether it's with other vendors or whether it's with yourself and your team. If you are
Mhm.
not taking back a gem after
Yeah.
every event, no matter how great it went, if you are
Mm,
not taking a gem back with you and implementing it into your process or putting it into your brain or talking to someone about it, then it's a missed opportunity for you to continue to elevate yourself.
amen. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. If 2022 through 2024 has taught us anything, it's that the current upcoming generations value work-life balance above
Yes.
all things, and boundaries are a game changer, right? So for a lot of pros born, let's say before 1990, they have been surviving in, let's call it the hustle culture loop,
Yes.
right?
Guilty.
Hustle, hustle, hustle. We're supposed to show how busy we are, like cannot take a break, show signs of weakness, all the things, right? So that's been their entire career. And agreed, guilty, like totally workaholic over here. And this new standard is not something that comes naturally, right? It's going to take a while to adapt. And anyone may look at your career, your clients, your travel, your personal hobbies, your marriage, even all of it, and say, how does she do it all? And they wouldn't be wrong, right? To think that you do an impeccable job of balancing it all. But we know it's not always easy. So how do you make sure that your work-life balance isn't compromised? And are there any signs that tell you when something is off?
Well, I think one of the journeys that we should all be on, and I think we're just going to notice this, it's going to be a huge, in my opinion, trend of 2025 and moving forward is just the collective wisdom, and the wisdom within ourselves of listening to our intuition, trusting ourselves, not always looking outside of ourselves for validation and the answers. And so number one is when you get that ping of like, yep, you need to prioritize self-care or your health or your relationships, any of those things. And then we go, yeah, 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 but like I'll do that on Tuesday next week. And then that Tuesday goes and, we all know how it goes. Number one, we've got to listen to those pings. And a friend of mine likes to say, the universe or whatever you believe in, will come up and dust you with a feather on your cheek. And then the next time it'll poke you on the shoulder. And then it's a brick through the front window with a note. And then boom, it's the semi truck. So let's not, as a collective, wait for the semi truck. I have been super guilty of that time, and time again. And I'm in my old age, trying to get better about listening to that. And the funny thing about it is, and this is where this next generation is just light years ahead, is that when we move into that, when we operate with a bit more ease, flow, and grace, when we take better care of ourselves, when our mental well being is better, when we are rested, when we're prioritizing those things, well, guess what? Everything else gets easier. And so all of a sudden, you are more creative. You can problem solve that business, or you have the capacity to deal with that tricky client, or whatever it may be. So I think the old me used to think I was somehow shortchanging my business. But in the truth is, no, if we feel this way, we're actually really putting our business and all of that first, because we are a reflection of our business and vice versa. So this is like the number one thing I think we all need to focus on this year.
Yeah, I always find it so funny when I hear somebody say, "Man, I wish there had been signs." And I'm like, what did you think all of those thoughts in your head were? When you like wake up in the morning, you're like, "Man, I really need to go see a chiropractor." You don't just wake up randomly and say, "I need to see a chiropractor." Like, you need to see a chiropractor because your body's way of telling you, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, with experience also comes the forgetfulness that there's years attached to it. And I sure know that I don't recover from anything the way that I used to. And so, with a lot of that experience too, is like you have to take care of yourself. Like you are your craft, you are your person, and if you go down hard. And there were probably quite a few signs telling you
Yeah,
that
and I
path.
do think you nodded to it earlier, but our industry is historically short-sighted. It's season to season. Let me book out this season and go on to the next. And I've been in this long enough to see, sadly, colleagues pass away, people get sick, people who want to retire, but there's no retirement in place, all of these things. And so and it's part of like what has me so passionate about teaching business, because I think the short-sightedness alone is what keeps people into a perpetual hamster wheel that often, we're in such a glamorous industry, but often there's a big poverty element associated to that it just does not allow you to build the time freedom, the freedom of choice, the freedom to be able to retire someday, all those things that I think are paramount to be able to take care of our families and ourselves. So it's so important.
Yeah, I'm often reminded about when I got pregnant with my daughter, and I had so many of my planner friends in San Francisco say, aren't you afraid to tell your clients?" And
Yeah.
I remember that because it struck me as so odd, because I would never have booked a client that I couldn't tell that I was pregnant. But it became very abundantly clear to me at that time that there's so much fear-based running businesses throughout.
Mhm.
It's like you're afraid to ask for time off. You're afraid to let your clients know that you have a life. You're afraid, to not answer that midnight email. And it goes back to the conversation where I said, my clients aren't afraid that I'm having a baby. They just want to know there's a plan. They just want to know
Sure.
communication wise, that everything's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
that, if something needs to happen, that I'm prepared for that.
Yeah.
They're going to be overjoyed that I'm having a baby. But the idea of hiding it or keeping that from them never once entered my brain.
Mm.
And I think that that's just a testament to finding the right client, number one, but then also just knowing like, yeah, they might have some fears or they might have some doubts or some initial hesitations, but how I handle that situation after I tell them is all that matters.
Yeah.
That's all
And
that's important for.
And that's why they're paying you to be the guide, the expert, and to once again set those expectations for them versus them have to go, well, geez, and then she showed up pregnant.
Yeah, right? I know. How do you
The
hide
nerve.
that? The nerve of you. I know. Oh my gosh. Well, can you share your favorite anti-burnout tips that you've learned along the way while you've been scaling?
One I think is I'm a big Elizabeth Gilbert fan, Big Magic. If you guys haven't read it, it's like it should be required reading in for any creative. But she has a quote that I'll kind of butcher here, but it's essentially that something like when you're yelling at your creativity and your art and saying, make me money, and you're doing that, it's a bit like yelling at a cat, and the cat's just looking at you thinking, well, why does your face look so weird? And I have no idea what you're talking about. And so I think about that all the time, that we need to find a way to nurture our creativity, to remember why we got into this in the first place, and to make sure that we're not just yelling at it, telling it to make us money. And so find ways to get back to the things that you love, that you started to do in the first place. So for me, that's shooting projects that are just fun and creative, of, usually involve big gowns and beautiful places. Getting back to the things that light you up. And I have always found, and this is like the weird kind of mystic and energy of it all, that when I am taking care of that and I'm feeding that part of my creativity, the numbers and the business grow proportionately. When I start to lose sight of that, when I start to become a robot that takes pictures for money, my business starts to feel harder, things get harder, etc. And so they are absolutely linked together.
And you run, right?
Hmm.
You run
Yes,
in every place you go to, you run.
yes, I'm a big
That's
runner. And it's usually, like we said, it's the times that you're not in your business or on it or anything like that, that you have those ideas, or all of a sudden you're like, oh, and for me, it's usually, yeah, on a run or something like that.
love that. I have to scope out craft coffee. I'm like, love it. New place. Where's the coffee? Like, I got to
There
go
you go.
hunt down the coffee and the good food. Like, that's my
Mhm.
priorities. Yours are slightly healthier than mine, but that's great. I mean, we all have our things. Okay, so understandably, when you were in the early stages, right? You are just kind of throwing pasta at the wall and trying to figure out who you
Such a
are and
race.
what you to be when you grow up, right? Like you're just really just trying to figure it out. And I can count on one hand how many pros that I've ever met that found their niche from day one and just thrived in it. Okay. It happens, but it's not the normal path.
Mhm.
Um, I'd love, and you alluded to this earlier, but I'd love your thoughts on narrowing your focus and finding your niche versus doing all the things. Okay.
Sure.
So how much of a role do you think niching down has played in your profitability strategy? And when did you know that it was time to focus on a particular area or a certain kind of client?
Yeah, and I think this is where it's so important to recognize where you are in your phase of business, because if somebody's like, "Hey, I'm already, queen of my market. I've already put in the 20 years experience. I'm an established brand. I just like lay back and the clients come to me." It's going to be such a different conversation than somebody that's like, I'm establishing myself as a brand. I'm getting going. I'm figuring out my niche and my market, all of that. And so I think first and foremost, if you're in that earlier set where we're in the brand building phase, we're in building our reputation, establishing our client base, building our market, all of that. If even just for me, it was realizing that I've got to be all in here, right? I've got to put my head down. And so I literally remember sitting and crying to my then fiance about giving up assisting fashion photographers, because I would get calls and say like, okay, next month, can you put 7 days on the calendar? And once again, those were 7 day rates. I could do that math quickly and go, I'd really like that money, but I also knew that would be 7 days. I'd be out from sunrise to sunset, totally not able to work on this business at all. And I was essentially not going to grow it. And that was just, once again, not a good long-term strategy. I had to go all in on that. And I think we all need to do that. And if you look at any successful, thriving business, there usually is a point where they started out with one thing in particular. Amazon, books, Airbnb was same thing, really specific. All those things that they had to master that before they branched out. And I think we just have to do the same. We've got to earn the right to get to the next level where we can add on, another line of business or expand our focus. And you guys heard a dog barking earlier, but same thing. If you're gonna start to train a dog or anything like that, if you every day said, okay, today's Tuesday, today's agility day, we're gonna do agility. Tomorrow's trick day, we're gonna do tricks. Next day is this day, and every day you just keep trying to teach them something else. I mean, that poor dog, it's going to take years for it to master all those things. Where
Yes.
if just we said, yeah, if we just say every day we're going to do sit, stay, lay down, roll over, and we repeat that every day, I mean, if it's a pretty smart dog, probably in 3 weeks, it's going to be like licked, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nailed.
So set yourself up for success just the same way that you would, any lovely dog that you're training.
Yeah. Ah, that was amazing. I love that. It's so true because, man, we are all so overstimulated. Like we are
Yeah,
all so overstimulated. And, especially now, even with education, it's like somebody right now is doing a webinar while we're doing a webinar and they're talking about something that may or may not be the same or could completely contradict what we're saying. And so you're just like,
yeah.
oh, but what about over here? And you're just trying to take in all of this information. And it's just so many things. And I love it. Creatives love so many things. Yes, it's true. Like we just can't help it. Like it's
Yeah.
just you got into this business to be creative and you want to do all the things, but narrow it down and do it so well that you can then afford yourself the luxury of being able to start even entertaining other things that you want to do because you just have this well-oiled machine over here that is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like you said, especially if we've got shiny squirrel syndrome where we're just, all over the place, sometimes it's just proving to yourself that you can follow something through and see it through and then go, okay, now I've earned the right to do the next thing. And
Talk about building
absolutely.
confidence.
Yeah,
Like that's it. Like
yeah,
nailing it, nothing feels better than that.
yeah.
Well, this was amazing. Before we kick off our Q&A, because we've got some amazing questions that came in during
Great.
registration, I wanted to ask you real quick about this new pricing with proposals workshop that you have coming up.
Yeah, so this is a workshop, as I mentioned earlier, kind of this pricing and the philosophies around it is something that I'm super passionate about because I think it's one of the most tangible, tactical ways that you can really change your business in a huge way in a small amount of time. So I'm teaching at the end of this month. We opened up registration just because we knew I was going to be here and we are going to be talking money, so you guys can check it out. It's a workshop that it's really in depth. It's a 4 hour adventure with me where I take you from A to Z, why we want to use proposals, about knowing your numbers, knowing your profitability, the same way that I go into confidence when somebody says, yeah, but can't you do it for $15,000? And I go, actually, I can't because I know what my team costs, my time costs, all these things. And I just go, I'm so sorry, but I can give you a beautiful referral. That level of rock solid confidence when you're able to do that and then provide this exceptional level of customer experience, it's a huge game changer. And we've seen people, dramatically leapfrog their pricing just by making those changes.
Oh, I love it. Well, Sari has added that into the chat. So please, if you do anything today, go ahead and just at least check out what she's offering and what it includes. And I mean, we've got some testimonials already in the chat of people that have done it with you. So I'll always love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, should we dive into some Q&A?
Let's do it. I love Q&A.
Thank you. Okay, I'm newer to the industry. I've received great reviews and have good relationships with vendors, but when can I tell when I'm worth a higher price point?
So I hate to always bring it back to proposals, but it is so relevant because I used to be in the same trap where I had my price sheet and every year, like clockwork, January would roll around. I go like, time to update the price sheet for the year. And it was like, well, how much do I increase it? 10%, 20%? It's kind of like we're throwing pasta at the wall again. Where when we're doing proposals, each time, if you have a little uptick in, hey, my second shooter costs a little bit more, I'm going to adjust that number there. If I realize that, like, wow, I'm almost booked out for the full year, I should, bump up my pricing. Each time we're doing our pricing, we're having those incremental adjustments, and we're also having a natural way to upsell because if they go, oh, I actually want you for coverage on this day or this thing too, then it starts to grow organically versus us kind of making these arbitrary, like, am I ready? Am I worth it? I don't know. So I love incremental price adjustments using proposals over time, every single time we're sending them out versus some big price leap once a year. And to me, that feels a lot more natural. It lets you ease into it. You lose the panic attack that happens when you update that price sheet and it's all of a sudden new huge numbers. All that goes away.
Yeah, I had seen somebody say that when they registered. They were like, I need pricing help because I raised my prices and I'm struggling to get bookings now. I have regret. And that is such a natural feeling. And of course, I mean, I think there's also we're such an instantaneous world that, we just think, oh, we're going to raise our prices and it's going to be fine. Everyone's going to book. It does take some time sometimes. And depending on
Totally.
what you're pricing your prices to as well, you may now be top of the market, which means that clients are now going to do a little bit more research to figure out what you're offering and how that compares. So you got to think about, all of that when it comes time to raise your prices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I want to hire employees and I'm ready, but I'm afraid to lose them after all that investment. How do I retain employees in this industry?
So this is where I really encourage people to start small and to ease into the water. And by that I mean hiring remote VAs on a contractor hourly basis, starting out a few hours a day or a day a week, you name it. Really make it manageable. Another lesson that came out of, the 2020 through 2022 period was keeping overhead as low as we can, staying agile, staying nimble is really, really smart as a business owner. And so I really love people to ease into those waters. And when I first started doing that, I was like, great, I've got all these problems. I'm going to bring in a VA. They're going to solve them, right? Well, and that's not how it works either. I had to look at each problem, go, okay, here's what I think is a good solution. I just need somebody's help to consistently implement it. And then I would delegate that to them. And that was a much better way that we were able to start getting that support in the business slowly over time and grow. And that also then didn't really all of a sudden dramatically hit your profitability.
Yeah, yeah, I like that guideline. That's great. Okay, here's a great one. How do I pay myself a fair living wage if I'm already maxed out in my area pricing wise?
So this is where I think you've got to look at that bigger picture. So if you are, a big fish swimming in a small pond and your aspirations are to be a bigger fish, then we've got to go, okay, at some point you might have to leap over into that pond that's next door and start to expand. So that's where I think, once again, having that vision of where you're headed, having clarity on what you want and why, all of that's so important. Because if you're saying, I actually really want to work with this segment of the industry or at a higher price point, that means I'm going to need to think bigger and think, more national, more global, whatever that may be. Sometimes we just need to do that. So the caveat is though, I also think sometimes geography is a bit of a story, a limiting belief story that we can challenge, because I have had many of students. There's one that comes to mind who's an amazing videographer based in Germany, who grew his rates tenfold, and he didn't move. He does serve clients all over the world, but he was able to still live where he lives and just, think bigger. And so I do think, how can we kind of sometimes challenging those limiting beliefs that might be a self-imposed glass ceiling.
Yeah, yeah. And that's actually so, I wish that more people would kind of think outside of their geolocation, because there's so much room to be able to, go into other areas. And it's always amazing to me when I get to meet pros that live like on the bordering states. It's like an hour drive to go into another state, which is a completely additional market that you could be
Mhm.
marketing to, and they're not. They're just sticking to their one thing. It's like you have one, possibly two states that you could now move into without having to book a hotel or without even having to journey so far away from home. And it's not a natural thought that some people have. So you're totally right. Like look at your circle and then draw another circle and see where you can go from there. So easy.
Yeah, and it's one of, take the benefits of the current modern time that we live in with the downsides. Don't just go, oh gosh, it's so noisy and it's so loud and there's all this social media content creation I have to do. No, take the benefits of, wow, somebody in Singapore can discover you this morning and send you a message and book you this afternoon. I mean, that's a amazing thing that wasn't available to us 20 years ago. So just capitalize on that.
I love that. I love that. Okay, this is great. Is your entire process automated at this point, or do you still do anything manual, like managing leads or client onboarding?
Yeah, so this is an important part of that business vision that we talked about. And for me, throughout the years, I've had to make certain decisions. And one of them was, how hands-on do I want to be with my clients? And I've tried to be hands off in certain areas. I learned bookkeeping. I'm very comfortable being hands off. But certain things like album design, having that interaction with clients, I actually like to be very hands-on, and I've made a conscious decision to retain that part of my business. I still call all my weddings, all those types of things. I see every lead that comes in. I review every email that goes out, those kind of things. And that is important to me because I think that's where I am staying in the connection with it. And I chose to serve fewer weddings at a higher level versus a lot of weddings, automated or whatnot. That said, I'm a big fan of systems and organization and where can we automate certain things to have more leverage in the areas that matter, like the client interaction.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so last one. Are you scared of 2025 and the profit potential? 2024 was the worst year ever.
Well, I think once again, framing is important. And 2024, I know was a hard year for a lot of people, but I do think these things, hard times create strong businesses. Hard times create strong people. So I'd explore a reframe of like, how can we look at that and go like, how is it useful? And for that reason, I go 2025 does not scare me because I know we've survived a lot of. If you're watching this, if you're in business now, wow, you've been through a lot in the last 4 years. High five to you, first of all. Like, good for you. You're here. You're learning. You're talking about numbers, which so many people didn't sign up just when they read that. So like, I'm not scared at all. I'm actually really proud of how our industry grown. The bar just keeps getting higher, which I look at as like a beautiful up-leveling challenge, that there's so much more room for growth. And that part of it is what excites me.
Yeah. Oh, beautifully said. Well, thank you, my friend. I thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insight today. I know I'm leaving with a few gems to help educate our members and our community on socials better. And to everyone else, if today resonated with you, take action. Look at your pricing and give yourself permission to charge what you're worth. And remember, Katie is always here to help as an educator and a mentor. So you should continue learning from her and following her education trail. Lastly, as a reminder, this is a monthly webinar hosted by us, Rock Paper Coin. Don't miss out on our next Money Talks next month in February, which will be an amazing multi-panel lineup about working with your spouse. The good, the bad, and the ugly with some of the industry's best spouse partners. You can't miss this one, so be sure to sign up. And again, thank you, my friend, for your time today, and thank you all for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody. Such a pleasure. And you can always DM me with any questions if you're watching the replay.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.